What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty Dumbies, your home for the latest and greatest in college football news in action. We're your hosts, Hunter and Tony, and this week gave us a lot of great games, a lot of shifts in the rankings, but going to start things off with some more coach firings. Our total now this season is 11, and I do want to apologize that when we ranked our best openings last week, we did forget Kent State, as they were in a similar spot as Stanford, where they announced the interim coach in the offseason. But I think it's safe to say we both probably would have had them last. I know I would have. I don't want to speak for you, Tony.
Too, so, no,
okay.
I would have, 100%.
No disrespect to Kent State.
Yeah, I mean, Kent State, they're great vibes. I love seeing, just the stuff that comes out of there because it seems like it's just memes in a dream. But one thing, of course, the big elephant in the room, the obvious one, Billy Napier is finally getting the boot from Florida. It felt like it was long overdue at this point for fans and people just around the country thinking, what is the point of, dragging him along at this point? You're going to do it, so just do it. Get it over with. And they did. They finally did it. He went 21-24 in his time, which is not great given the program history and whatnot. He's going to be owed $21 million, which I thought was going to be a little higher, honestly. But I mean, regardless, it's still a lot of money to be fired. So
he's owed half of it. He's owed half of it by within the next 30 days, and the rest is paid out over the next 3 years. It's a pretty good deal for not having a job.
Billy Napier day of payday.
Yeah. But, he went 21-24. Dan Mullen, who they fired before him, I think it was 35-14 was his record in the same time frame. So, just, fire Dan Mullen, go to Billy Napier, and, continue to see this regression. I think it was poor that the news kind of leaked before the Mississippi State game that he was going to get fired regardless of what the outcome was, and he was fired. I'm not surprised by it, though. I just wish it had gone down a little bit differently. But hard to feel too bad when he does get $21 million.
Yeah, it's, like you had said, one of the greatest jobs out there is being a fired coach right now, and especially in the college landscape where these coaches get millions of dollars and then their buyouts just add on top of that. So it's really hard to beat that, but the question now arises, is that the hottest job available?
Ooh, I had thought about that coming in, honestly. I'm glad you brought this up. I think it becomes a really desirable job. I would still argue my take of Virginia Tech of being the most interesting. I'm still going to stand by. Obviously, Florida is going to be right up there with Penn State in terms of resources. I think in the objective landscape, Penn State is still the better job. I think it gives you something a little bit more. Florida, though, could be the best job. It's 1A, 1B sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think Florida and Penn State could easily be interchangeable as the 1A, 1B. The hater in me is, it's hard to say this, but I would almost say Florida purely because it has that SEC brand attached to it, and that just brings a lot more your way and potentially easier. Obviously for Billy it wasn't easy, but it's one of those jobs that you think that hopefully they can find someone to take it into the right direction, because it's a big brand. The SEC, Florida alone is a huge brand. They've got the history. They've got the fan base year in, year out, even with the mediocre play they've seen recently. So it's one of those things that, hopefully they can somewhat get a right decision this offseason so that they can kind of get back on track to, the Gators and the swamp that we all knew growing up.
I would love to see them kind of reinvigorate as well, but I don't know if it's in their cards. I think for me, Penn State, even though they haven't won as most recently as Florida State, or excuse me, not Florida State, Florida, Penn State's brand is just a little bit more interesting and a bigger pull. But I you can't complain if you land either of these jobs, obviously.
You're gonna get paid a lot of money probably regardless. You'll have almost infinite resources at both. So whoever lands either of those jobs is going to be swimming in the goods for quite a bit, whether they do a good job or whether they do terrible and get bought out again. So we'll have to see what it looks like come the end of the season when they start to actually ramp up the coaching search and the names that we see get brought up.
This is going to be one of the most interesting cycles in recent memory. And another job that's going to open up is Colorado State. They've relieved Jay Norvell of his duties after going 18-26 during his time there. Tyson Summers, their DC, has been named the interim. Colorado State, obviously not the same caliber as Florida, but I think they are an interesting team as well. In the sense of a middle of the road where we had it with similar to like an Oregon State in our rankings, UCLA. They're going to the new Pac-12. It's an interesting potential there to separate themselves and wanting to make sure they go into this new conference on the right foot. And Norvell had just not gotten the job done over his tenure.
Yeah, it didn't look great over there. And, like you had said, Colorado State is definitely one of those sort of, middle, maybe lower of the pack sort of things right now, but has the potential to definitely go up, especially with this new Pac-12 coming in. I think it kind of screams potential in the sense of, a coach wanting to do this with a new conference, new chance to kind of reinvigorate the program and maybe bring it up, and get that, elusive win over Dion and the Colorado crew over there, which is always a great game, but speaking of Norvell, another Norvell that when we had heard that a Norvell was fired, the one that people thought, Florida State, Mike Norvell, they have committed to him for at least the end of the season, which is a shock to many. And it could be because they just simply don't have the money for his buyout clause, or they just want to, let him ride it out for at least the end of the season. Who knows? But it seems like he's there to stay for at least this season.
We talked about it earlier in the season when UNC came out in support of Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick reaffirmed his commitment. I still don't think a school doing this for their head coach is ever a good thing, because you should never have to come out and say you're still in support of them. So I think the buyout clause is interesting. What I could uncover is that, they had a lot of big meetings over this past week. No idea what those could have been, but boosters, investors involved, and they're trying to get that money together to get out of his contract. I'm interested to see what they do, because now they're 0-4 in the ACC. Their season went from very promising after that upset win to kind of crumbling now.
It took a drastic turn, down the stretch. Starting off 3-0, getting ranked and looking like a team to beat, and then just falling apart week by week, and it just doesn't look any better. I don't know what's going on with them. It seemed like they had the world at their feet, and then it just turned around and the world just stomped them back down to how they were, which was unfortunate to see, because I thought it made for interesting storylines and whatnot, especially in the ACC with how Miami was, and a potential, kind of 1-2 there with them playing, and then Miami kind of beating them pretty good. So I don't know. This is another one that's definitely interesting, especially like you said, where you have to come out and publicly support, which they did. Florida did do to Billy Napier at one point, I believe, earlier this season or before the season had started or something. I believe the athletic director had said that they were going to stick with him, and sure enough, he gets the boot. So you never know. It could just be kind of like a tactic at this point of make it look like it is, and then we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, what they talk about day by day, what the boosters and the other people that are involved with this decision are saying. So it's something we're going to wait and see, but I wouldn't be surprised sooner rather than later he's gone as well.
I agree. I think, if they are going to wait till the end of the season, he is gone at the end of the season at this point. Another coach kind of sitting on fire here is Luke Fickell from Wisconsin. Another school that put out a statement supporting their coach and claiming they want to invest more into the program despite the disappointment of this season. Again, never great when your boss has to come out and vocally support you, and despite a bad season, Wisconsin has not been good this year, and they have not had a lot of success under Coach Fickell, so similar boat. I don't see him lasting much longer either.
Wisconsin has definitely been extremely lackluster and just terrible this season, just flat out bad. I mean, it doesn't look good with each passing week, and obviously them being in the Big Ten and some of the games they've had where they've played Alabama, they just played Ohio State. I mean, they just they're outclassed on every facet of the game, and it just doesn't look good. And this was a Wisconsin team that you can say not that long ago was kind of competing in the Big Ten. At least. Making some form of the game competitive, whether they lost
having
or ended up winning.
At some level.
Yeah, they had something, and it just seems like it's all gone now, and it's just completely out the window, and they just need almost like a full reset here because it just doesn't. It just looks bad from top to bottom in Wisconsin right now. So he's another one that could possibly do they pull the plug on it, or are they gonna ride it out maybe another season or two and see if he can really get what he wants. And the old saying used to be you got to give a coach 4 years so that he can have his players and his program, but now
with
the
case
way
anymore.
Yeah, with the portal and everything now, that's all completely out the window. So I think there is an expectation for most of these coaches, especially in these bigger conferences where they have more of resources and whatnot, that you can go out and get the players that you want and need for your system, and so that it can be successful from day one.
I agree. The turnaround of programs, the expectation is a lot shorter timetables now because of this. And programs are going to get a little bit more antsy with it because of the current state of the sport being so in flux. Teams are reacting similarly. So it's going to be interesting to see how these play out. I think both of these, when not if they become open, are two really great opportunities as well, especially if Wisconsin is going to commit a lot more to the program, similar to a Virginia Tech did earlier this year.
It could change, a lot of aspects of it. I mean, we've seen it now with Indiana where they finally decided to fork up and invest in the football program like they had been doing with other programs, and now it's paying off. So, other programs could easily follow the model there soon and, flip that script of investment into football where they know the money's at and make themselves contenders quick. So both of those programs, especially FSU, because they're extremely well known. They're in the ACC. I mean, Wisconsin being in the Big Ten as well, that's obviously another huge name. So it's got some draw to it and a lot of potential to it if they were to open up. And, I think at some point, sooner rather than later, they probably do.
I agree. So we'll keep an eye out for this. This is going to be a storyline that's going to progress throughout the season. But taking a look at some of the games that happened this week, a lot of big matchups like we mentioned, a lot of games that shifted a lot in the rankings. So kicking things off here, Texas A&M survived Arkansas 45-42. And then in another SEC showdown, Georgia took down Ole Miss 43-35. Two games where they were really tight down there at the end. Georgia just has a great fourth quarter against Ole Miss, while Ole Miss just can't get on the board.
Georgia, I mean, Kirby Smart is extremely well known for his second half adjustments, and he did all of that and more in that game. And that game was an all-time classic. They were swinging back and forth, and it was entertaining football to watch. But the way Georgia was able to pull it off there at the end, pretty typical of Kirby Smart. But another big SEC game, of course, is Alabama taking care of Tennessee 37-20 in a game that I thought was going to be a little closer, but Alabama being Alabama now and finally catching drift of the previous years of them and looking good. So and then of course Notre Dame getting their key win against USC 34-24 in a much, much needed win for the Fighting Irish.
And then BYU did win the Holy War 24-21. It was a great game. You know, rumors still saying Game Day really missed out on an opportunity there, but you live and you learn. They beat Utah. It was a great showdown. And then Boise State knocked off UNLV 56-31 in a Mountain West showdown, really showcasing that despite their losses earlier this season, Boise State's still cream of the crop over there.
Finally, death to the will UNLV agenda. You know, I love the UNLV story that they had been going on so far, but it was a matter of time before it crumbled, and it finally did against a very good Boise State team. So we don't have them. He won't have them ranked probably anytime soon, and they're definitely not top 10 anymore. So we don't have to worry about that. But of course, the biggest talk, the upset of the week, Louisville going in and shocking Miami on the road, 24-21. Carson Beck throwing four interceptions, the most he has ever thrown. It was not a good look for them. And it was from start to finish, it kind of just looked like Louisville was there thinking and knowing they were going to win.
I completely agree. They played to win. They weren't conservative. They played aggressive, fake field goals, creative play calling, keeping Miami on its toes. Running back Isaac Brown had one of his best games of the year, if not his best game. And Louisville just, they never backed down. And it was a great game. Miami nearly overcoming all of these mistakes they had offensively, with Beck throwing 4 interceptions. Now, you know, the last one as they were driving into Louisville territory with under a minute left to tie the game was deflected, tipped, and picked. The ball did not bounce Miami's way. I still think Miami's a really good team. I've been singing the song of Louisville all season. I think Louisville is a really good team, and I've had them ranked for the whole season, even after their loss to UVA. So I think this comes to less of a shock to me, although I did think Miami was the better team, as you know, we both picked them this past weekend.
I mean, it was definitely something that I wouldn't say I'm too shocked, but I was shocked in the sense of how it played out. I knew Louisville was a good team. Like I said, I was just looking for that win, and this is 100% that win for them. I mean, they really went in there, they stamped it, and they made Miami, you know, they caused those mistakes, whether, like you had said, with deflections and whatnot, making it look like it was theirs to control, and they absolutely did that. So this is going to have massive implications on the ACC and which two teams are going to come out of that now. You know, because if you have a team like a Miami win out, and then Louisville wins out, and then UVA wins out, you know, you could have 3 teams tied with that one loss where they've each beat each other, and you have Miami looking out. And with how the voting and the committee has been doing, you know, things the past couple years, that's not what you want being in the ACC.
No.
You need to be in that driver's seat, because
and don't forget, SMU's still undefeated in the ACC as well. They're
SMU,
3-0, so.
yep, they are very much.
And same with Virginia, because that loss to NC State wasn't a conference loss. So you got 3 undefeated teams ahead of you.
Yep.
That's not going to be easy.
It's going to be very hard. They're going to need people to slip up. Miami does play SMU. It's their first game leaving the state of Florida this season. I've said it many times.
I remember you saying that.
Yes, that'll be their first game. I believe it's next week. I think November 1st is when they finally leave the state of Florida and play a road game in a different state, and I think that could absolutely decide the ACC conference title game there, because if Miami goes there and loses, they can kiss the playoff goodbye.
This really did just open up the ACC completely. It's wide open. It's anyone's for the taking, just like the Big 12 is now. Arizona State shocking Texas Tech for its first loss of the season, 26-22. This was a must-win game for Arizona State, and they pulled it off. Sam Leavitt, played a great game. And Texas Tech just could never get going with Baron Morin out when Will Hammond, he had an admirable performance. storm back in that fourth quarter, but it just wasn't enough. And Arizona State gets the win that they needed after stumbling a couple times this season already.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. ASU needed that, and they'd probably be the first ones to say it. It really did look like that Texas Tech was missing their starting quarterback. They're one of the most high-flying offenses this season, beating every opponent by 20 plus, and it just wasn't there. It just seemed like they could not get a rhythm going, a flow going, find that consistency. Everything was getting disrupted. When they might have gotten something going, it was just immediately shot back down with, either having to punt it or a sack or something like that, where it just would not go their way and just killed all momentum. But you got to give credit to Arizona State with how they game planned for it and they were ready for it, and
especially after the way they lost to Utah the week before, to bounce back in this fashion. It's it like we were talking about the ACC. It opens up the whole thing. It's going to have massive implications. It's another conference with a bottleneck at the top. You have BYU and Cincinnati undefeated in it, and then Arizona State, Texas Tech, and Houston all at one loss as well. And Iowa State and TCU, you can say, are still kind of in that mix. It's a very competitive one where a lot of these teams are going to be cannibalizing each other.
Absolutely. I was literally about to say that they are about to cannibalize each other because most of them are playing each other. So it's going to be one of those rough ones again come, playoff selection time, where probably only going to see one team come out of the Big 12, and that's probably going to be it's going to be the conference champ.
Unfortunately, I think.
I
think the Big 12 has some really good teams.
It's very unfortunate, and you could probably say the same about the ACC, where we see that there's depth and they are good teams, but the way that the committee goes, you might only see one of them, squeak in. So we'll have to wait and see. We're getting a lot closer to playoff time, rankings time, I believe. Not this upcoming week, but the next is when they're supposed to start. It's usually the first week in November.
Yeah.
So that following Tuesday. So we'll see. We're getting a lot closer to it, so there's going to be plenty more to discuss there. But we're going to jump into, of course, our games, of course, my Green Wave, your Dukes. Starting off with my Green Wave, I put here, yet again, the cardiac wave strike again. They always seem to leave it late, and they yet again left it late. Played abysmal in the first half, and then second half kind of, slow start, but then got their way up there. Same story I've been hitting on again. They just cannot find the end zone enough. They get down into these red zone trips and either leave with 3 or nothing. And the first drive that we had after Army had, of course, their abysmally long drives of chewing the clock. I believe Army's first possession was 11 minutes or something like that. I didn't think we were going to get the ball in the first quarter, honestly.
That's how it goes with Army.
Any service academy, you're not getting the ball much.
No, you were talking to me about it, and they had nearly 39 minutes of possession. That's a crazy number.
It's absurd, and it was something that I had hit on where we all knew it, that they were going to eat up the possession time, so you have to find a way to get them off the field quick. And we just couldn't do that. I mean, like you had just said, 38 minutes and 58 seconds of possession time. It's almost 40 minutes in a 60-minute game. It's unheard of. It's absurd. We both went in the half 3-3. Tulane got the ball coming out of the second half and couldn't do anything with it. It was a quick 3-and-out, and it was just like, that was bad. They needed to score there because we all knew that Army was going to eat up the possession. And then, of course, they did go down and score to take the lead. And then Jake Retzloff throws his first interception of the season, albeit I thought it was going to be the most costly interception ever because at that point it was 10-10. We were driving, and we were about to we were in the red zone, I believe, or just outside of it. He throws a ball trying to get to the end zone and overthrows it by just enough where the safety was basically just playing catch at that point. And it fell right into his lap, and it was like super frustrating because that was a good drive, great possession, and it ends up in their hands, and it was just like, oh, that's deflating because you knew that the long drive was coming. Army gets the ball back with 14:10 left in the fourth. Tulane does not get possession of the ball until 5:54 left in the fourth. Down a touchdown because Army did score off that, so they got points off the turnover. But then Tulane responds, they tie it up, and then the defense stepped up major in crunch time. When we had scored to tie it up, Army gets the ball back heading into the 2-minute. And I thought it was going to be over because they had been kind of just taking these chunk plays on us. And I was like, they're going to get in range. They're probably going to kick a field goal to win it. But our defense steps up, gets them to do a 3-and-out. We had all of our timeouts, so it made it a lot better where we could time out. And then the most absurd circus catch happens to win the game that I was covering my eyes watching because I thought for sure he was going to throw his second interception of the season because he not only does he throw it to a fully guarded man, he throws it to double covered, and it takes the most ridiculous bounce, and somehow Shaz Preston comes up with the catch to take the lead with about 27 seconds left, I believe, and I was just flabbergasted at that point. But again, like they had done in the ECU game, they let them get a little close and enough to at least throw a ball into the end zone, but our defense batted it down, got the job done. Nonetheless, a win is a win, still undefeated in the conference and still rolling. So roll wave.
They continue to give you a heart attack. We'll have to see if they can lock in towards the end of the stretch here, but they keep winning. That's all they got to do, and that's what the Dukes did for me this weekend for homecoming. They dominated that second half against ODU, winning 63-27. At half, it was 28-27. The atmosphere was great. You know, I might be a little biased, but JMU easily has one of the best group of 5 atmospheres in the whole country, from tailgating to the game day, the entire game day experience. They do it right. People are so surprised when they come and see how awesome that experience really is. And it was another great one. People stayed the whole game. The crowd was rocking. The second half, things got crazy. But that first half, the opening kickoff, nightmare scenario. You know, JMU gets the kickoff to start the half, fumbles it coming out of the end zone. ODU recovers a touchdown, up 7-0, 4 seconds into the game. It's just like, it's not the worst way to start a game. Just the worst
not
way.
Ideal. Not ideal.
There's no way to sugarcoat it. And that set the tone for the first half. But JMU's offense, I've been saying it all year, they have been lackluster, and that's why they've been held back. This game, they played the entire game. The offense stepped up in the first half when the defense, kickoff wasn't the defense's fault, but defense in the first half still was letting ODU's offense, which is a powerhouse, get going. Offense responded by scoring every possession. And then in that second half, both sides of the ball clicked. The defense adjusted. Offense kept clicking. And we finally got to see what JMU's offense looks like playing up to its full potential. That's why I've been frustrated so much this year.
And I'm with you there. Like, I get it because Tulane's the same way where they haven't seen that full potential yet. And it finally paid off for you, you know, putting up 63 in a game where, you know, in the first half, I'll be the first to say it, and I'll still say it, is that the first half, your defense got carved. I mean, it was bad. I mean, I was shocked almost. Every time I checked the score, I was like, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I was like, where's this defense?
It was an awesome game to be at because that's highly entertaining game to watch and see. And I was watching bits and pieces of it as well. And I was just like, every time I tune it in and someone was in the end zone, I was like, oh my God, like what's going on here? Yeah.
And I was just like, I know their defense is good. I'm like, but where is it? And then that second half locked it down.
The adjustments they made were great. JMU's defense has been great all year, and they've been keeping us in games. If the JMU offense that showed up the last couple weeks played on Saturday, ODU would have smoked us. But they finally clicked. Alonzo Barnett had over 600 yards, or just under 600 yards of total offense, 6 touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns. just an absolute monster of an offensive performance. Wayne Knight continues to be an amazing player. He is actually second in all of FBS in his average all-purpose yards per game, his receiving, rushing, and return yards. He's second most all time, right now in the whole country in that category. When JMU's clicking, they're hard to beat. So it was good to see that finally happen. And to show how well the defense played in that second half, JMU is still the only team in the country to not let up 300 yards in a game. They let up 275 in the first half. You said we got carved up. We did. They only let up 10 in the second half. They only gave up 285. That defense could not have played any better in the second half. 1 yard in the entire third quarter. Absolutely insane. JMU is winning 49-27 at the end of the third.
It was absurd because knowing that stat of they haven't given up 300 yards, I kept checking the yards of how much they had given up because I was like, I had seen stuff and I was like, how close are they to giving it up? And then I saw they had 275 in the first half. I was like, this might be the game. I was like, the flow of it, this might be the game.
I definitely thought it was.
And then sure enough, I go back to watching it. And I'm like, oh, let's check on these total yards, and it's barely moved a dime. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I was like, I thought I was finally going to be a good hater here and be like, you gave up 300 yards. Like I was looking forward to studying that text, and now I got to freaking shelve it another week maybe. So I was like,
you can keep holding that one in your back pocket. No, but I'm happy to be.
No, it was great. I mean, honestly, it's insane that you can say that this far into the season still haven't given up the 300 yards. Mm-hmm. And to finally get that reassurance from your offense is probably everything that defense wanted and more. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it can, I don't know if it can really go up from here because that was about as good as it can potentially get, other than a more, a better first half, I would say. But
obviously,
other than that, it's still great.
Puts us right in the front of the college football playoff conversation now, too. Obviously, the ACC is the favorite to get a representative, that fifth conference champion in. But anything can happen, and JMU showed that they are a team to watch out for one of the playoff spots. So I'm happy to see it click. And with all of that clicking, we mentioned a lot of changes in the rankings, and these two games from our teams definitely did change the rankings a little bit. So I think it's time we jump into those and give a little spotlight to some of these teams that are up here right now, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, these are our rankings, of course. Like always, going to talk about the criteria, where head-to-head is always a key factor. Weekly results matter, but they're all equal. We do not consider hypotheticals. They are the worst thing ever. Another hypothetical win for the SEC. And then, of course, overall team vibe, how teams are doing and whatnot. And we're getting closer to the time when we're going to mention our little conference championship snippet here when we get into our little playoff settings here. But nonetheless, to start off, of course, with Miami losing, I had Indiana make the jump to 1. They were my 2 teams, so obviously it's only right to move them up. I still don't think Ohio State has that, thing yet to retake the 1. If they get a win like an Oregon on the road sort of thing, sure, they could potentially jump up to that 1 spot. But for me right now, still Indiana's to lose. I think they're probably one of the hotter teams, if not the hottest team in the country right now, with everything just going their way. I had Oregon jump back into the top 5. I wasn't going to punish them too hard for losing to now the best team in the country. And it was a closer game. It wasn't like it was a blowout of any sort of sense. And then they did bounce back very well in their game against Rutgers, which was very much expected. Louisville is a new team for me, and they drastically jump up because, of course, them beating Miami and then Miami beating USF with our head-to-head rule. I had to have Miami ahead of USF. They're both same record at this point. And then of course Louisville beating Miami, so had to throw them in there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to drop Miami, down to like the 20s to rank Louisville in there. And I had always been saying that Louisville was very, very close. They were 26 or 25B at this point for me. And all it needed was the one win, and they finally got that one win. So they absolutely deserve to jump in here. And I'm okay with them jumping as high as they have because they're a good team. They've proved that. And it just makes the most sense right now. It's just how it's going to be.
We had talked about that too, because obviously not everyone in the group had this Venn diagram of victories with UVA over Louisville over Miami, and Miami over USF. Some people did have Miami drop below USF because of the loss to Louisville. And at this point in the season, the argument is that just because they have the head-to-head, there's a bigger body of work. That's why we each have our own rankings. I value head-to-head a little bit more. Tony does. And for sometimes it depends on the matchup where the head-to-head might matter a little bit more. I always try to defer to that as my golden rule. So I had that same thing of UVA in front of Louisville in front of Miami, and Miami in front of USF. Mine just on a week-to-week basis looks a little bit less drastic because I've had Louisville ranked all season. But like you said, it's okay to have them have a big jump. They're clearly a good team that you don't just have to put in the back of the order here.
Absolutely. And I know, so we had found it this morning when we were going over our rankings that we had all forgot about the Miami USF game because when you had looked at all of our group rankings this morning, every single person had USF over Miami. All of us changed it except for one, of course, being Will. He said his rankings were final, and it's his rankings, not mine. All power to him. But nonetheless, Miami,
games matter.
Miami beat them.
Will's wrong. I'll say it here.
He's
the guy who had UNLV
pretty
in 10.
handedly. Yeah, he did. Miami beat them handedly, so
They
it
did.
wasn't like it was a close game. If it was a close game, I could maybe understand it a little more if you putting USF slightly above them because of how things have gone and whatnot. But it was a blowout, so it's hard to really defend that in that sense. So it just makes the most sense in my opinion. Of course, now we are hitting the time of where we have our two lost teams jumping in here. We knew it was coming at some point with just the landscape of things. It's hard to ignore it. I had Illinois, you hate me for it, Tennessee, and Notre Dame jump in. And that one probably pains me the most is Notre Dame just because I'm a hater. But I can't deny that they've been playing good football. They got a good win over USC, who was ranked in my book. So it's hard not to throw them in there now. Of course, with them losing, they drop out, as well as Memphis, who really laid an egg and just dropped a game that they should not have dropped. And potentially, losing out on game day as well to UAB, who, it seems like if you want to win a game, all you have to do is fire your coach these days. It just seems like everybody who fires their coach just goes and wins a game that they probably weren't supposed to win. Obviously, UNLV dropping out as well with their blowout loss. LSU losing to Vandy, dropping out as well, and then of course Utah losing the Holy War, which I predicted. And so I had to, nothing crazy, too crazy. Of course, obviously Miami being my biggest drop. Texas Tech does stay ranked. ASU is definitely one of those teams that are right there. I almost considered last second throwing them in over Notre Dame, honestly, but I just stuck with my one, and I was just like, they're right there. They're definitely my 25B /26 right now.
Mm-hmm.
It almost pained me to not rank them because we did have Texas Tech top 5, and they definitely needed that win, and this is probably easily the hardest week to rank. Like I sat and looked at like 4 or 5 different spots for over 10, 15, 20 minutes. Scrolling through scores, seeing who won, who lost, records,
This was a
head-to-heads,
challenging one.
it was very, very rough, and I don't even know if I could sit here and say that I'm 100% satisfied with these, but they're in the final, and I just got to live with it now.
I definitely agree with that. These rankings were really challenging to do, and honestly, from my perspective of going to a game and having my day dedicated to the whole game and not really having as much of an opportunity to watch the other games throughout the day, it definitely was hard for me to, rank these teams where I felt confident about what I was doing. And to me, that just highlights why the AP poll kind of sucks. Outside of the obvious bias, these beat writers are spending all day at a game and watching these games live. They often can't, really truly understand what's happening at these other games. Obviously, if you're a reporter, you can stay a little bit closer attention than maybe a fan who's at another game. But for me, it really highlights why rankings shouldn't happen until halfway through the season at least, and these the AP poll shouldn't be taken as seriously as it is.
No, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say it would help avoid preseason expectation bias as well for a team like Texas or Penn State earlier in this year.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that when we bring up the AP, but I agree with you, and I was going to just piggyback off that. There's a reason why the playoff rankings don't come out till later or halfway through the season. They get that collective body of work and they go based off of it. So like you're saying, where it's hard to base things when you're not able to see everything. I mean, even me, like, I can't see everything. I try to watch what I can. Most of the time I'm working. I'll have a game up on my phone and I'll watch it. I'll switch through games to try and watch what I can. And
you're telling me you have a job outside of this, Tony?
I'm so sorry. It's bills. This doesn't pay the bills yet. Okay, but it's just it's hard, and I get why. Sometimes the AP is just egregious and just terrible, but it's like...
It's still no excuse, but it is an excuse.
Really,
it's just not an easy thing that I don't think it should be taken in such a definitive matter.
Yeah.
Unlike my rankings, which are clearly perfect in every way. Which, instead of starting at the top here, I'm going to look at the back end of mine because you said it, not too long ago. I am mad, Tony, and I'm mad at everyone else in the group. Why is Tennessee ranked? Everyone but me still has this bum 2-loss team ranked. I've been anti-Tennessee all season. I haven't had them ranked, but I'm finally this is the final straw for me. How can Tennessee be ranked? Their best qualities are quality lessons, and I won't stand for that for Tennessee. I can't understand it.
No, I get it, and I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, you're the idiot. I mean, they were 100% a team that is easily, again, when I was re-looking at them after I had to, mess with the whole Miami USF situation that I had, they almost got completely dropped too. It was just one of those things where I was just like, my head was all over. Those were the three I initially put, so those were the three I put in Illinois, Tennessee, and Notre Dame. But they got some quality lessons, with the early loss to Georgia, which easily could have been a win. It was on a missed kick. So that could have completely changed the landscape. But again, hypothetical, so we don't care. So I mean, it's not like I still think that they're a decent team enough to where they could still easily, I don't want to say easily, but still find a way to sneak in, and especially with how we know that the committee and whatnot, there's definitely going to be probably 6 SEC teams. They could easily be one of them. So they have a decent schedule left, with 2 ranked opponents left at this time. Obviously, when they play them, it could be changed. With that, especially that last game against Vanderbilt, that could be a massive game at the end of the day. So they're 100. I see where you're coming from. I get it. I know you've been anti-Tennessee all season. but they are definitely hanging on by the thinnest of threads in my eyes. And even if they win this upcoming week, they could still easily drop out for me.
We talk about it is the season of some 2 lost teams getting into the rankings. For me, the team that convinced me though was Arizona State. That's why I have them at 21. They have a great win over Texas Tech. For me, their win over Texas Tech and the team that they have been, obviously that early stumble against Mississippi State is a huge, huge stumble. But I guess I think Arizona State is a better 2-loss team than Tennessee and Illinois. I don't mind Illinois as much. I'm just going to harp on Tennessee, and obviously I have Notre Dame ranked as well. So I do understand what you're talking from. I see the SEC has paid you off, and I now know the type of man you are.
Another hypothetical win for the SEC. What can I say? The SEC money hits different.
Yeah. I would have sold out too, so I understand. But looking at the rest of my rankings here, back at the top, Indiana does claim the number 1 spot for me, and with that, they're the number 1 with BYU joining in at number 4. They get a big jump after that Utah win for me. I really debated keeping in Utah as a 2-loss team. Ultimately, I did decide to put San Diego State in over them right at the tail end, but there was really a lot of teams I could have put there. Memphis, Utah, North Texas, Northwestern, Minnesota, and even SMU were all kind of right there on the cusp. And, the Mountain West is just very competitive with San Diego State, Boise State, Hawaii, UNLV, and Fresno State all battling it out there. So I thought San Diego State deserved to be represented. If they're good enough for the AP poll, they're good enough for me. So I'm going to stick with my gut on this one. I have Oregon back in the top 5 as well. Georgia Tech jumping into the top 10 at number 6. And then just kind of see a big shift up for these other teams. Alabama, UVA jumping up. Georgia, after a win against Ole Miss, jumping up. Louisville jumps up from 17 to 10 for me after that big Miami win. And then Miami drops from number 1 to number 12. Still in front of USF, and Cincinnati jumps up to 11. Texas Tech falls to 10. Ole Miss falls to 15. Those 3 right there, Miami, Texas Tech, and Ole Miss, were my biggest fallers. And then Vandy and Mizzou are still right there. Obviously, they're going to face off this weekend, so that'll be settled. And I got Navy taking a big jump up to number 18 here. Excuse me. So those are the teams that were already in, and then had a bunch of teams enter here. Navy, obviously, was 25th, but being undefeated means something to me. So despite the bye week, they're going to jump up. Oklahoma and Houston are back. I might have been a little too harsh on Oklahoma earlier in the year, but they're here. And then I got Tulane and JMU sitting there, happy to be part of the commitment here, and then Notre Dame rounding us out as well.
I'm with you in the Tulane JMU. I was on the Tulane wave slightly early last week, putting them in at 25, but with the way things flowed, I honestly wasn't going to move them up too much, maybe to like a 23, 22 sort of thing. But with just the way everything kind of fell and the teams that lost, I was just like, I got to move them up a little more. I mean, and then, JMU jumping up all the way to 21, with that emphatic win. So I was like, I got to give it to him. I really do. Mm-hmm. It was deserved in my opinion, but it's definitely going to be those two teams for sure. Are going to be ones to watch here on this back stretch of the season with, some of these games where, a lot of them could be labeled as trap games at this point, where it's that game you expect to win, and next thing you know, you're losing by 10 at half or something like that. So it's going to be easy one to watch here. I don't want to say easy, but a good one to watch here. But it's going to be fun nonetheless. It's going to be it's college football. What's there not to love about it? So
exactly.
But we're going to jump right into the AP and the dummy rankings. Of course, like always, I say it every week, the constant controversy around the AP of who gets in, who doesn't, sort of thing. It's, the typical sort of stuff. We know what to expect at this point with the AP, with obviously Ohio State not budging. A second at 1, the top 5 rounding out with Alabama and Georgia sitting at 4 and 5, Oregon going up to 6. They only dropped Ole Miss down to 8, Miami only down to 9, Vandy jumping up 7 spots to the top 10 after their good win over LSU. Of course, BYU jumping up a good bit. Notre Dame being in the top 12, ridiculous. 2-loss team that high is absurd and obviously based on brand. Texas Tech being below Notre Dame is just another key point there of brand, where a 2-loss Notre Dame against the Texas Tech is like a 1-loss. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? UVA still moving up slightly. Tennessee only dropping to 17. Louisville, of course, jumping up, going there to 19. LSU somehow still being ranked. Dropping only 10, of course, with Texas, again, still being ranked. That's one of those ones we still don't know, and it's obviously based on preseason hype there. And then rounding out the new ones with Illinois rejoining, ASU, of course, and then Michigan to round it out.
The AP for me this week is really interesting, just to round off what Tony was saying as well. USC, Memphis, Utah, and Nebraska dropped out and were replaced by Louisville, Illinois, Arizona State, Michigan. But, the top 5, I don't really have a major surprise with any of these teams. Looking at 6 through 10, I feel like Ole Miss and Vandy might be a little overrated. But, I'm not going to stop Vandy from getting that top 10 ranking. Vandy's the one SEC team that I respect. So it's fine with me, but I think BYU's underranked at 11, while Notre Dame is very much overranked at 12. And Missouri didn't fall that, isn't going to be moving too much. Texas Tech does drop all the way down to 17. It felt a little harsh. And then really what I have a big problem with is Tennessee and LSU have no business being ranked. I just harped on it, but LSU falls into that boat for me as well. I don't understand either of these teams being ranked ahead of Texas in this sense. I think Texas has the better win over Oklahoma. It just, I don't know. I don't understand it. There is, There's 10 SEC teams ranked, and every single SEC team ranked 5 or 2 or better is ranked, which to me is insane. I just don't think all of these teams should be ranked. There's other teams like Northwestern, SMU, Iowa State, or Minnesota that all have a better reason to be ranked, in my opinion.
I would love to see a team like Northwestern jump into that ranking there and shake things up, purely because it would push the Tulane agenda. So, because we beat Northwestern pretty handedly week 1, so it would go to just make things a lot better for the Green Wave. And speaking of them, they still are receiving votes in the AP, with USC receiving the most, just on the cusp. Utah right behind them with 40, and Tulane right behind Utah with 37. So they're getting closer to getting that number next to their name. Houston not far behind as well, with Navy still being unranked, which is absurd nonetheless.
Anti-American.
Yeah, I mean, no respect for the troops there. Kind of ridiculous. San Diego State still receiving votes as well. JMU getting in there, receiving votes. Baby. Good for them. It's good to see that. I love to see it just because of the G5 agenda there. I love it. And then Boise State also receiving votes, which is good for them after they had that really bad start to the season to really ramp things up and get going. And then, of course, TCU got 2 votes, and then Minnesota also receiving 1 vote. So pretty interesting crop there from the AP who they're picking. So some ball knowers in there, I'll give them their dues. So some ball knowers in there, and then some of them, not so much. So it's definitely something we'll see week by week here, but it's going to be gone soon here when that playoff poll starts rolling out here.
For sure, here soon. We aren't going to be comparing our rankings to the AP poll. We're going to be comparing them to the only one that matters, the playoff poll. So,
yep.
Stay tuned for that change when it does come. With the Dummies poll, though, we see Indiana take the number 1 spot. And this week it was actually unanimous where Indiana, Ohio State, and A&M all were 1 through 3 ranked in that order by everyone. I think that's the first time it's happened this year. So those 3 are pretty locked in there at the top. And then Georgia Tech gets a big jump to 4. Oregon rounds out it at 5. And then BYU and UVA join the top 10 here. Ole Miss only drops to 9 for us, but good to see BYU and UVA getting a little bit of love as well. And then we're going to have the biggest jump, Louisville going from unranked to number 12 overall. Obviously, I had them ranked at 10, and they got a huge jump in everyone's rankings, clearly. So they get that big jump. Vandy, just like in the AP poll, jumps up 9 for us from 20 to 11, really reaping the benefit of other teams losing. I think that's really exemplified in ours, where we had more teams ahead of them lose, like a Memphis, a UNLV, teams like that, where they fell back, and it caused a bigger rise for a lot of these teams, including like Cincinnati, where then Miami fell 14, and then rounding out here, we got Navy ranked. We love the troops still. Undefeated means something to the Dynasty Dummies. You will not stop us from ranking them unless they lose. But if they keep winning, they're going to have an incredible resume. So stay tuned. And then we got Tulane and JMU ranked by everyone this week. And I've been called out for actually being a fake JMU fan because I had them ranked the lowest out of everyone. Which
you do.
I mean, I think that just means I'm a real fan because I'm not overhyping them. I'm very critical of them. So,
understandable.
But I was very surprised. I couldn't believe everyone else had JMU ranked. I thought the haters and everyone would just come out.
It was damn close. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh, I can't do this. But no, they deserve it. I mean, as much as I like to hit on JMU, I like seeing them, succeed. Being, Virginia boy, I knew them growing up and whatnot. Going to the games myself with you and stuff like that. It's fun. It's fun to watch, and I think nothing would be more electric than for them to somehow find a way to, get into that playoff and play a game, because it would just be great. So it's going to be fun. Obviously notable, the teams dropping out of our poll, obviously being Memphis, UNLV, LSU, Utah, USC, and Washington. And then joining, obviously Louisville, who's been on the cusp.
They were actually ranked a week ago at 25th, and then just happened to fall out because of points. So they've been right in the rankings.
Yeah, they were
a point away.
Yeah, they were in it and then dropped out by a point, and then now they're in it for good, basically, unless they just drastically mess up. Of course, Tulane, JMU joining, we had just said. Houston making their way back in, and then Arizona State and Notre Dame rounding it out. Other teams who have received votes for the Dummies poll only being Illinois and San Diego State, coming from you. But, of course, again, for us, kind of getting that better collective of what we're seeing, same sort of, ideals, maybe not where they're put, but we're seeing the same stuff from us where, the same amount of teams and who we think is here and whatnot. And, you're going to find a difference in the placement of it, obviously, with, like we said, with Will and USF and Miami, where he didn't put USF below Miami. So that's what's going to happen. We have 5 people with 5 different opinions and brains, albeit some of them being very much wrong sometimes, and some of them don't know how to spell things like Cincinnati. So it messes things up for me. But but it happens all the time. You know, someone else who's supposed to be a doctor keeps putting spaces after his stuff. So
yeah,
you know, that's the worst doctor I've ever seen. So, but that's just how it's been going for us in this dummies poll. But it's a lot to look forward to. It's gonna be great. This stretch coming in here when the playoff ranking does come out, it is going to be electric. You're gonna see some great stuff here on this show, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I am too. It's going to be great to be able to break down the playoff bracket and really showcase the bracket itself. We're saving that for when they start to come out with it for the playoff. But one thing I did want to touch about on the Dummies poll is the Big Ten disrespect we have, which you could say we are massively disrespecting, and we only have 3 Big Ten teams ranked, although they're all in the top 5, so clearly they got some good teams in our eyes, but no one outside of Indiana, OSU, and Oregon, which just feels crazy to me. And as I was going through this, it just felt like there was a lot of teams right on the cuffs. Obviously, Illinois getting votes. Mentioned Northwestern and Minnesota. You know, Michigan obviously ranked by the AP poll. They have a bunch of those teams right there. And I think as some of these other one-loss teams start to falter, they'll creep back in. I don't think 3 teams being ranked is a true reflection of the Big Ten's strength as a conference. But I've said it before this season, you don't have to be a ranked team to be considered a really good team. So I don't think that's quite the case. It just, I can't believe that is the case.
And no, it's insane because, you know, when people talk about college football and the powerhouses, it's always the SEC number 1 and then the Big Ten right behind them. And, you know, those are the 2 conferences that consider themselves the top dogs and, you know, better than everyone by miles. And they are deep. They've got a lot of good teams. I mean, you look at, like you had said with a Northwestern, USC is still good.
Yeah, USC. I forgot to mention them. Yeah,
Iowa's 5-2 now.
Iowa's dangerous.
Michigan, of course, is always. Yeah, and then like you had said with Minnesota, and believe it or not, UCLA is 3-1 in the conference. So
that's the crazy thing.
They are 3-4, but they are 3-1 in the conference, and they are right there, which blows my mind. So they are above Illinois in the conference because Illinois' 2 losses are in the conference. So,
and Nebraska and Washington.
Yep. So there's gonna, you know. UCLA has a chance here to like play just spoiler for everybody.
Oh my gosh!
Said,
imagine an 8-4 UCLA somehow making the conference championship game. I hope it happens.
I would love life. I would be a UCLA fan for life if that happened.
Oh my gosh!
They play Indiana on this upcoming week. So that's gonna be
an upset. Watch out
potentially, and then they got Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and USC. So it's that's a tough stretch. That is a tough stretch. But they did beat Penn State. They basically ended their season.
I think I might have been able to outcoach and beat Penn State. To be honest,
possibly. I mean,
you know that win holds less weight to me than. You know, I think the Maryland win is more impressive at this point.
I mean, possibly. I mean, even.
But I do love seeing them beat Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It was always great. But, I mean, it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. I mean, every conference this year, you could just throw a wrench in it and just chaos ensues on every single one. All it takes is 1 week for the entire thing to just completely flip, and just teams are everywhere now. I mean, you could, especially, you know, everyone's going to say it with the SEC because they're all going to play each other and cannibalize each other. And it's going to be, well, because they're the SEC and it's a quality, you know, it's a great schedule and whatnot. But, you know, if it's anyone else, it sucks. So, I don't know. But I'm definitely with you that the Big Ten has a lot of potential there. And I'm definitely keeping my eyes on some of these teams here that are going to be pretty close here.
I agree. It's crazy to think that there's only 3 teams ranked. You know, I would say we do not have a Big Ten bias, but we do have an SEC bias. We're still seeing a ton of SEC teams ranked. It's crazy. I think we need to put our hater hats back on a little bit tighter and really stop ranking these Tennessee-like teams. I don't know who would be doing that, but I'm gonna harp on it because I am flabbergasted.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy that you would say that. I mean, I don't even know. So, but nonetheless, my rankings, my rules. So that's just how it goes. But let us know what you think about our rankings. We will be posting them later. What do you think about the AP poll? What do you think about the dummy rankings? What are you looking forward to? What storylines are worth looking at here with all these coach openings happening? Let us know what you guys think. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Dummies. Don't forget to follow our personal Twitter accounts as well for more great content. At Hunter_Shaw5 and at Crony2020. And we will see you guys later this week for the preview show.
Thanks, guys.